I'm Jolene Wynn, and this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number 208, Navigating Discrepancies in Physical Intimacy. If your husband is struggling with a pornography problem and you want some help with it and you are not finding the resources that you like, you are in the right place. My name is Jolene Wynn. I am a certified life coach. I am an active member of the LDS faith, and I am the wife of a former porn addict. And on this podcast, I am going to share with you the tools that you need in order to start your healing journey. This is where I'm going to show you how to dive deep into intentional living, how to rekindle connection with your spouse, how to manage all that emotional turmoil that you're feeling, how to break the addiction cycle that you have to your husband's addiction, and tell you all of the ways to do that and start healing. I am so glad that you're here, and I can't wait to get started. Let's go. Hello, my ladies. I am so excited about this podcast episode, mostly because it is just going to be off the cuff, on the fly, stream of consciousness, basically. And it's all inspired by a conversation or multiple conversations that I've been having with some followers on Instagram. If you guys are not on Instagram, you can come follow me there at Jolene Wynn Coaching. And I posted a little box in my stories and I said, ask me some questions. And several of them are about navigating physical intimacy. What do we do if he wants it more than you do? What do you do if you want it more than he does? And I want to answer both of those here today. So the first one that I want to start with is the question of what do we do? How do we navigate a physically intimate relationship when he doesn't want it as much as I do, right? If he's not as interested, but I still am. I still want physical intimacy, but he doesn't. And if this is you, then I have a few thoughts for you, okay? So this is very common, first of all, and there are several reasons that this is hard, but the biggest reason that this is hard is because of how it makes you feel, right? When you are desirous, when you desire more physical intimacy than your spouse, then it can make you feel very unwanted, very disconnected, very undesirable. There's a lot of emotions that can come up, very rejected. All of the emotions that come up are why this is a difficult situation. Does that make sense? Now, some of you might be thinking, man, I wish we were in that boat. For those of you who have the opposite problem, who your husband wants to have more intimacy than you do, then just hold on, I'll get to you in just a minute, right? But notice even that in and of itself is just evidence that the circumstance, which is whether or not he wants to have physical intimacy, is something that you can have different thoughts about. Okay, so the emotions are why this is so difficult. Now, when you have a lot of emotions that you don't know how to handle, it can create a lot of reactions to those emotions, right? When you don't know how to process the emotion of rejection in the moment where you put out to your husband and you offer yourself physically and he says no, if you don't know how to handle that rejection, that might come out in a way that isn't helpful, right? We react to the emotion rather than actually processing it. Okay, so one of the reactions might be that we isolate, we pull away. We don't want to be connected to him, so we remove ourselves physically. Maybe you go sleep in the other room. Maybe you turn around, put your back to him, and just don't talk to him for the rest of the night. Maybe you just start to withdraw emotionally because you feel so vulnerable. When you don't know how to handle and process that emotion that comes up, it's very difficult to respond in a way that actually improves. Most of the time, our reactions to our emotions actually make it worse. So again, one of the things we might do is react, right? We might yell, we might pick a fight, we might get really defensive. We might just shove it down and power through. We might just say, all right, this feeling is terrible. I don't want to feel this again. And so we just shove it down. Or we try to distract ourselves. You immediately get on your phone and start scrolling, whatever it is to try and get out of how you're feeling. When you don't know how to process it, then our reactions can actually compound the problem and make the situation even worse. The best thing to learn how to do is to manage those emotions. Learn how to process them and see what you make them mean. Again, the reason that this situation in particular is so difficult is because physical vulnerability is very vulnerable, right? Physical intimacy is very vulnerable. We are not only making ourselves emotionally vulnerable in this scenario, we are also making ourselves physically vulnerable. So our brain is going haywire with all of the potential dangers, okay? So it takes everything in as 10 times worse than if you're just being emotionally vulnerable. Being emotionally vulnerable is hard enough, but actually then adding to it with physical vulnerability is a very strong, very powerful thing to do. And it is something that can create a lot of connection, because that's what vulnerability has the potential for, right? That's us opening up, which can lead to more connection, but it also opens us up to possibly more negative emotion. When we are feeling rejection and we don't know how to process it, our brain will often attach it to our identity, which is why this is so hard. This is why this is so painful. If you offer yourself to your spouse and he's not interested, we often want to make that mean something about us. What do you make it mean? Have you ever offered yourself to your husband physically and he hasn't been interested? How did you feel? I know from personal experience, I have felt rejected. Okay, there have been times, I'm thinking of one time in particular, where there's been more than once, but there's been this one time in particular, I remember wanting to have sex with my husband, wanting to be intimate with him, and he was not interested. And immediately I just felt very rejected. And here's the thing, logically, I knew why he was doing it. At this point in his life, in the phase he was going through, he was eating he was losing weight, he was eating very healthy, he was very concentrated on working out, and so he was tired and he didn't want to have sex that night because he wanted to make sure that he was rested so he could get up and go to the gym in the morning. That was his thought. That's what he told me in that moment. And even though I knew it logically and I understood it, emotionally I felt very rejected. Now, I do know what to do with these feelings. I know how to process them. Now, the human, part of me that just wanted to be really bitter for just a minute was like, wanted to just lash out at him and be really snarky. Okay, that was the resentful part of me, and wanted to resent the fact that he was losing weight, even though it was something that I was really excited for him to do and be really healthy, and I was very happy that he was working out. In that moment, I felt a lot of rejection. Now, when you don't know how to sit and process that, like I do, even then in that moment, my brain wanted to react to it and get defensive and resentful. Okay, so when you don't know how to process that emotion and you make it mean something about you, then it's much harder to move forward beyond it and to process it. Okay, when you make it mean that you are undesirable, that you are rejected, that you are unwanted, unlovable, whatever it means, whatever your brain makes it mean, that is what we want to look at. Because even if we can logically understand why he doesn't want to, maybe he is tired, maybe he has to get up early, maybe he's exhausted, whatever the reason, maybe he's just not in the mood, ladies, right? Have you ever thought of that? Okay. And I know that our brain always wants to go to the worst case scenario and then start thinking of like, well, why is he not? Is it because he watched porn? I know our brain always wants to go there, but our brain also wants to tether it to us. And that's what I want you guys to look at. Okay. Does this make sense? The biggest thing to know is that your husband's lack of desire for intimacy has nothing to do with you. In the same way that your husband's pornography problem, his desire to see pornography, has nothing to do with you, his desire or lack of desire for physical intimacy has nothing to do with you. It's about what he's thinking and feeling and how he's trying to deal with it. You guys with me? If you believe it has to do with you, that's just a lie that your brain is believing incorrectly. And here's the good news, is that it can be changed. So even if you're like, all right, Jolene, I hear what you're saying logically, but emotionally I'm not there yet, all that means is that you have a belief that this is being tethered to. Does that make sense? So what happens is we have a thought in our brain that's connected to an emotion, right? Even if you logically know that it's not about you, it doesn't feel that way, right? And this is exactly what happens when we have a belief about ourselves that's connected to the circumstance, right? It's why you can't just think your way out of your feelings. You have to learn how to change what you believe, to disconnect the lies at the source. Does that make sense? So it's actually a simple process. If you guys want to learn how to disconnect your lies and change what you believe, I'm about to tell you. You guys ready? Okay. This is a simple process. I do this with my clients every day. This is actually the process that I teach in my modules, in my program. Okay. Step number 1 is awareness. Okay. We have to become aware of the connection. We become aware of what our brain makes it mean if he doesn't want to have intimacy. So pause and think about it for just a second. How do you feel if your husband doesn't want to be intimate with you? Maybe it's all the time, but maybe it's just occasionally, or maybe it's happened once. How did you feel? And then what did you make it mean? Why do you feel that way? What does it mean if you feel that, right? We want to become aware of the thought and the feeling that our brain has connected to this circumstance, to the situation of him not wanting to be intimate, right? Step number 2 is acceptance. Stop judging yourself, okay? And stop resisting it. Most of the time, when we become aware of a connection, we judge ourselves for it, okay? We might become aware of, okay, this makes me feel rejected. And then we judge ourselves for that feeling, or we don't want to feel that feeling, so we pretend like it's not there by trying to think our way out of it is part of it, right? We try to think, oh, okay, well, no, I understand. He's just tired. We try to think our way out of it. We try to talk our way out of how we're feeling, but that never, ever works. The feeling doesn't go away just because you start thinking that it's logically, we can logic it away. Okay, 2 different systems, logic and emotion. Okay. And when we judge ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way. I should be more understanding. I shouldn't be so upset about this. He's the one that's watching porn anyway. All of that judgment just keeps all the emotion trapped under there. So we want to make sure that we let go of the judgment, become aware if it's there, let go of all of it, let go of the resistance, and have compassion. Oh, I'm just feeling this emotion, and it's totally okay if I feel it. Step number 3 is to process that emotion. Okay. Again, this is a skill. Not just something that is totally in theory. This is a practical skill that I teach my clients. It's still there. The emotion, whatever it is, rejection, undesirable, unwanted, unloved, unattractive, whatever the emotion is that you feel, it's still in there. Okay? And that thought that you have of like, I am unwanted, he doesn't want me, that is connecting to that emotion, okay? And nobody's ever showed you how to process that and let it go, which is exactly why I do what I do, right? It's why we carry around, quote unquote, emotional baggage. It's because we don't know how to let it go. Little bags of emotion, emotional pain that we don't know how to process, that we keep reacting to, shoving down, distracting ourselves from, and never learning how to actually process it and let it go, which is why it's still in there, which is why even though you can logically understand that it's not about you, you can know that it's not about you, but it doesn't feel that way, okay? Step number 4, choose a new thought, okay? You get to decide what you believe. So if you want to make your husband's lack of desire for physical intimacy mean something about you, you totally can. You can make it mean that you're undesirable if you want, or you can change that belief. You can decide that even though you don't want to be okay with him not wanting to be intimate with you, you don't have to make it mean something about you. Same with your husband's pornography problem. You don't have to be okay with your husband watching pornography, but you can change what you believe so you no longer attach it to you and make it mean something about you, that you're not enough, that you're lacking in some way, that it has to do with you, because it doesn't. Okay? You can decide if you want to believe something different. And then step number 5 is retrain your brain. Your brain has neural pathways that connect the situation, which is your husband, right, to your feelings, whether you're feeling disconnected or not enough or whatever it is that you're feeling. Those can actually be rewired to connect to different thoughts and emotions. Is it work? Yes. Is it simple? Yes. Is it doable? Yes, absolutely. When you know how and you're using the right tools, 100% doable. My clients always tell me, they're like, you make this sound so easy. And I say, it's not easy, but it is simple. When you know the steps and you have the tools to do the steps, it's a very simple process. Easy? No. Doable? Yes. and absolutely attainable. This is how you change what you believe about yourself. This is how you change believing that your husband not wanting to have intimacy means that you are undesirable. And here's the thing, ladies, is most of you are married to wonderful men who love you very much and they love you and they think you're attractive and they think that you're beautiful, and they're telling you this, and yet you're not believing it. And the reason you're not believing it is because it doesn't resonate with you, right? It's because you have your little insecurities. It's because you have beliefs about yourself that you're not enough. And as long as you have those beliefs, then you will continue to find evidence for it. So anytime, whether it's consistently or just happen once, anytime your husband doesn't want to have sex with you, then you're going to use it as evidence of, see, I told you I knew I wasn't enough. See, I told you I knew he wasn't attracted to me. See, I knew that I just am not what he wants in bed. And your brain has all of the evidence for it, but it's only because you choose to keep believing it. So if you want to believe something different, you can. So again, notice how you are thinking about this situation. And then the real powerful question is okay, how do I deal with the lack of physical intimacy, my husband's lack of desire for physical intimacy? The real question is, how do you want to deal with it? What is it that you want to do? Because there is no formula. There is no manual. I don't have a textbook sitting in front of me that's like, oh, here's exactly what you do if your husband doesn't want to sleep with you. Okay? That doesn't exist. That would be great. But each one of us is different. Our relationships are different. Each one of you has a different way that you want to respond. So how do you want to respond to this? How do you want to feel about it? How do you want to think about it? Most of you don't want to be okay with it. You don't want to. You actually want to feel a little bit sad if your husband doesn't want to sleep with you. If you want to sleep with him, you want to feel a little bit sad that he doesn't reciprocate in that moment. Okay? And that's okay. But we need to learn how to handle the emotions that come up if that happens. And then look at what you're making it mean and how you're responding in that moment. Because most of the time, what we don't like is how we respond in that moment, which is all just reactions to the emotions that come up in the moment. We feel very at the mercy of our defensiveness, our anger, our self-consciousness, our embarrassment, whatever it is that comes up. And then we feel like we have no control over how we respond. And that's only because you haven't become familiar enough with your emotions to learn how to become comfortable with them, how to process them, how to respond in a way that you choose, even if you're still feeling and experiencing a negative emotion. Does that make sense? So let's ask you this question. Ask yourself this. How are you dealing with it right now? What is it that you do? I gave you guys some examples earlier. Those were just ones that came to my head. It's like, do you argue? Do you pick a fight? Do you isolate? Do you turn away? Have you just stopped trying? Have you stopped putting in the effort? Have you just and this goes back to the podcast episode I just did a couple back, which is where you say I can't care anymore. I just don't care anymore. But the truth is that it's just too hard to care. It's that you've tried so hard and put so much effort in, and it feels like it's not getting reciprocated. And so your brain says this is too hard to do. What your brain means by that is, I've put in so much work and effort and vulnerability into this. I don't know if I can keep doing it because it's too hard to feel this vulnerable. But if you're willing to feel vulnerable and you know how to feel vulnerable and you know how to process that, that's when you can decide, all right, maybe I do want to keep showing up this way, because the alternative is something else that I don't want, or maybe you do want to change it. This is the beauty of coaching, is that you get to decide, how are you dealing with it right now? And do you like that? Is that working for you? Or do you want to change it? And if you want to change it, what do you want it to look like? Do you want to be more honest? Do you want to have more compassion? Do you want to still not like it, but not make it mean something about you? All of that is possible. It's entirely up to you. You just have to learn how to manage your mind and process your emotions and follow those 5 steps on how to do that. Okay? Now, let's talk to my ladies who your husband wants to sleep with you more than you do. Okay? This is also difficult. And all of the questions and all of the things that I just went over apply to you in the reverse. The reason, why is it so hard? What comes up for you when your husband wants to initiate intimacy and you're not interested? What does that create? Typically, a lot of conversations I hear is that the reason that you don't want to is maybe you're tired, maybe you're not in the mood, maybe you're really self-conscious, maybe you don't trust his motives. If those are the case, I want you to get really curious and be really honest with yourself. Why do I not want to sleep with him? Why do I not want to have physical intimacy with him? Most of the time, what I hear is that you aren't feeling emotionally safe or want that to not be the only way that he connects in the relationship. There's a lot of resentment. If he's not putting in effort in any other way, then you feel like it's not okay or fair for him to then also desire to connect with you physically, right? It's like, well, he can't just ignore me for 19 hours a day and then expect me to sleep with him. And that's totally fair and fine. But I want you to get really curious and honest with yourself about, okay, how do I feel when he initiates? What are my thoughts? And why is it bothering me? If you were, or maybe you're totally okay with it. Maybe you're completely happy with your sexual give and take. Awesome. Congratulations. But if you haven't thought about it, I really would encourage you to do this. I have a client right now who we've been doing a lot of direct messaging. My clients can direct message me at any time. And we've been doing a lot of coaching via direct messaging about this topic. This has been her primary issue that we've been working through. She is making insanely positive progress, and I'm so proud of her. But one of the things we've been talking about is taking a break in the physical sexual part of the relationship. This is not the answer for everyone, but it only works, if you guys are thinking about it, it only works if you are 100% honest with yourself and are committed to doing the work about what's coming up for you emotionally. The reason that this works is only if you are committed to facing it. Because again, when you have that physical intimacy, it's not only emotionally vulnerable, it's also physically vulnerable. And sometimes that physical vulnerability can kind of cloud the emotional vulnerability stuff that comes up. Okay. And we'll just kind of mask it under self-consciousness and body image issues. And those are all well and fine, except that they're masking the deeper emotional stuff that comes up. Does that make sense? So if you want to really take a look at this, you don't have to take a break from your sexual relationship. If you want to, I'm all for it. But most of my clients don't. I never did. But you have to then be able to separate it and look at it intentionally, okay? And say, again, how am I feeling when he goes to touch me? Most people are just like, all I know is that I'm feeling anxious. Start asking yourself why. What am I anxious about? Well, I don't know what he's thinking. There we go. Why does it make you anxious that you don't know what he's thinking? Well, I'm worried that he's thinking about something that he's seen. Boom. Why are you worried about it? Well, because I'm worried that then he'll compare me to something that he's seen. Okay, and if you were comparing, let's say he did that, let's say he was comparing you, how would that make you feel? Well, then I would feel X, Y, and Z. That's what your brain is really afraid of. Your brain is already comparing in that moment. I have so many modules on this in my program. I have a whole module on physical intimacy. I have a masterclass on confident sexuality. I have a masterclass on how to not hate your body. All of this wraps up and goes hand in hand. I want you guys to really take a look at, or I want to offer that you take a look at what your thoughts and feelings are when you're having sex, when he initiates, when he offers, when he makes an advance and you don't want to. I want you to start asking yourself, why don't I want to? And some people might have, I did a whole series, I think about a year ago, thoughts about sex, thoughts about sexuality, all of that I go over in my Confident Sexuality Masterclass, which you can actually just do online. It's a one-off course. It's on my website. You go to jolenewind.com/courses. You'll be able to see that and you can just sign up and get it. It's one of my most popular classes for this reason. And if you're struggling with this, go take that class, okay? You can just buy it and watch it and do all the exercises with it. Because so much of our own thoughts about sexuality, about whether it's good or whether it's bad, or maybe you have an idea that your husband has ruined it and you don't want to participate in it anymore, or now it's not something that's beautiful. Now it's tainted because of what he's done. And if that's what's going on underneath, then that's what we need to take a look at. Does this make sense? I hope this is making sense. Okay, so usually when the husband and wife are not on the same page with physical intimacy, the reason that this is such a struggle is because of the emotions that it brings up and our inability to know how to handle them. Again, the best thing that you could do is come work with me and I'll teach you how to process this emotion. I'll help you figure all this out so you don't have to do it on your own. But start getting really curious and be honest with yourself. And then I would offer that you can start talking to your husband. which is a whole nother can of worms, okay? Communication is another thing that we dive deep into my program. I have a whole module on communication. How on earth are we supposed to talk about this? Again, the reason that it's hard to talk about this with your husband is because of the emotions it brings up. It's because you feel embarrassed and insecure and self-conscious, and he gets defensive, or maybe you feel defensive, and we're all just trying to justify that we're allowed to feel how we feel because he's done X, Y, and Z, and we've done all the laundry for 15 years, and he hasn't helped, and all of the things. And all that does is just entrench us into our position, which is great, and it feels really valid, except that then we are still on opposite teams from our spouse. We're on opposite sides. It's like, I'm entrenched on this side, you're entrenched on that side, and neither one of us is willing to give, because then we would have to look at our story, look at our stuff, and be willing to let it go. And if we're not willing to let it go because of what we make it mean, if I let this go, then it means that everything he did was fine. If I let this go, then it means that I've been overreacting for 15 years. If we have a fear of letting it go because of what we make it mean, then we're just going to dig in harder, which means we're never going to get anywhere, ladies. So I want to offer that we start taking a look at your feelings, start processing them. And again, if you don't know how to do that, come work with me. Let me help you. It will be the number one skill that will change your life more than anything else. And it will change it in every area. Because when you know how to handle your emotions, you apply it not only to your physical intimacy, but you apply it to every conversation you ever have with any human being. This is what enables you to talk to your children. This is what enables you to actually enjoy physical intimacy again, even if he wants it more than you do or you want it more than him, because you don't have to make it mean something about you. We can completely untether that. And that's what I want you guys to notice is that I know that it feels like, in the same way that your husband watching porn feels like it has something to do with you because it's sexual. It can very much feel like that. If your husband and you are not on the same page with physical intimacy, it can very much feel like it has something to do with you, and it doesn't. But if you don't feel that way, if you logically understand it, but you don't feel that way, it means it's connected to a belief that you have inside of you about yourself, your marriage, your relationship, something. And that's what we need to heal. And that's when you're going to be able to change it. All right? All right, ladies. I love you so much. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will talk to you next week. So take care. All right, ladies, if you enjoyed this podcast, then I want to invite you to come join my coaching program. This is where we take everything on the podcast and we actually get to apply it in order to transform your life. And I know that that is a big promise, but it's 100% true. On the podcast, it's like learning how to ride a bike. It's like reading a book, an instruction manual, via audio on how to ride a bike. And my coaching program is where you actually ride the bike. And that is what creates the transformation. This is what actually enables you to go from point A to point B, to actually create the transformation that you are seeking. If you are feeling stuck, if you are feeling like you are loving everything, but you just can't see the end from where you are now, then I want to help you. Come work with me one-on-one. I have a lifetime access program, which means it doesn't expire. You come work with me. I will help you every step of the way and work with you personally to make sure that you get where you want to go. I can't wait to see you there. Head to my website today, joleneWynn.com, and sign up.